Hey, how's it going, man?
Doing great. Let me set up the slow and laborious process of actually getting you to show up on my screen. I can never do this quickly. You want to
Hey,
introduce
man.
yourself to my audience?
Yeah. I'm Aaron from Three Right Turns on the Swizzbold Network. You may have an outside chance of knowing me from the Bald Move side, where I've been a co-host for 10 years now. We cover pop culture, entertainment, movies. We had a really big Game of Thrones podcast, Walking Dead podcast, Breaking Bad podcast is what I do full time for a living. I've kind of started this progressive podcast stuff on the side because I wanted an outlet to kind of talk more in detail about this kind of things. And I'm going through a process of figuring a lot of political stuff out myself.
Mhm.
I was born in kind of rural Indiana. I grew up very conservative in uh, uh, a conservative religious cult, I guess, a fundamentalist religious cult,
Fun.
and I broke. Yeah, it's great. But I've made the journey from there all the way back to kind of like leftist politics, and I describe myself as socialist curious, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And that I really like the ideas, and it feels like that's something that the future, if we have a future as humanity, it'll probably look like that. And I kind of got turned on to you because a lot of times, it's like I listen to leftist content. It's like, okay, I get it. Capitalism sucks. What do we do right now? And there weren't a lot of great answers that I was getting.
Hmm.
And I remember watching your stream a couple months ago, and you had the, like, I think it's called Baby Steps to Socialism, or my idea of how to advance socialism. And like, oh man, this guy's got some answers. So I wanted to pull you on the show and kind of expose the Three Right Turns audience to that. Three Right Turns, of course, is a reference that you make enough right turns, you eventually end left.
Right. The
With a,
yeah the full accelerationist horseshoe bend. Of course, I've been dealing with a lot of people like that online lately, but they do it unironically.
but that's kind of like my story. I feel like even though I was raised very conservative, like my parents' personal principles as far as like being devoted to, like, egalitarianism and concepts of fair play,
Hmm.
eventually led me in conflict with my own belief system and have pushed me increasingly left. And I keep sliding left. I keep sliding left. I'm waiting to see where I'll actually stop. But and the other thing I guess I try to do is, because I have, as a big broad audience of pop culture, I have a pretty good swath of like conservatives and liberals and progressives, and I guess I see my role as kind of nudging the audience a little bit left and trying to like fireproof them
Hmm.
against like authoritarianism and kind of grifters,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of that on both, quote unquote, both sides of the political sphere.
Yeah, I would say so for sure.
Yeah, like to hand people off to the people that are going to take good care of them intellectually and politically. So I think you're one of those types.
Oh, the yeah, one thing that I've noticed is the one of the worst types of online political commentators are people who exclusively criticize people without actually putting forward any affirmative or positive ideas of their own. Because when you're criticizing a group of people, you have absolutely no idea, at least from an audience perspective, where you're supposed to go following those criticisms,
Yeah.
or where those criticisms are coming from. For example, I have a friend called Shoe on Head who is popular and still is in the skeptic community, and has been for the past 5 or 6 years. And she's made many criticisms of like liberal feminists, like the wine mom type of feminism, like the more sort of the veneer of social progressivism wrapped around
Sure.
disingenuous shell. Yeah, and she's made those criticisms, and a lot of people thought because of that she was quite far right. Um, because she was criticizing feminists, when in reality, she was criticizing their inauthenticity. There are other people who do this as well. If you criticize people, you don't really have a good measure on where your audience goes after that. So I think it's very important to mix criticisms with a very, very strong and affirmative defense of the things you actually and directly believe.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because otherwise, you could radicalize people, and it's very easy once people are radicalized to go down some pretty dark paths. It's like it's easy. I feel like there's a lot of people you can watch, and it's like, well, what's the next step? And it's like, revolution, and
Yeah.
that's pretty scary, because you're really rolling the political dice when it gets to that point.
Well,
And
it's also an indication of intellectual, I think, laziness as well.
right,
It's so easy to say that as a more radical political figure, which I'd like to think that I am. Just saying like, oh yeah, dude, revolution, we need to overturn the system. Like, well, okay, phenomenal, great, wow, um,
right,
fantastic idea. There have been thousands of people in America who have tried to do that for some reason or another, to some effect or another. Where does that get us? We clearly need some kind of,
right.
we clearly need a better, groundwork to be laid before we can even consider ideas like that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you we want to start the conversation now. Maybe I should formally start it, because now that I've introduced myself to your audience, I still have to do the job of introducing you to mine. Can you talk a little bit about yourself, as far as, I like to have conversations about like people's backgrounds, because I talk a lot about my background and how it's influenced my political thought. Um, Talk about a little bit about how you grew up, your relationship with politics, where you grew up, any kind of religious thought, that kind of stuff, for a couple of minutes, and get a nice grounding of who is Vosh,
Yeah.
the person.
I never had much of a religious inclination. My family was agnostic, the only agnostic wing of a larger family that came from the South. They moved over to California, and I grew up in a middle-class family in an upper-class neighborhood in Beverly Hills, which they put me there because of the school district, which was wonderful. And of course, you fear not for crime in Beverly Hills. Nothing really happens there, nothing bad at least, apart from, I assume, all the white-collar crime. I grew up, and I assumed sort of the default political position of a young and sort of bright boy, which is a libertarian, because I was very self-centered and very much of the opinion that everything I had ever done for myself that was good was exclusively the product of my own ingenuity, and that everything else bad that has happened in the world must have naturally been a product of other people's intellectual or moral failings. And I thought that for a good long time. I was never a reactionary, though. I never thought like, oh, why are black people in a bad position? Like, oh, because they suck. Oh, why are women in a bad position? Because they suck. I just kind of thought for the most part that people were on sort of level playing fields, and there were probably some larger systemic issues that maybe we just need the right person to sort out, and that's it. It's a simple problem. But when I got older, I got exposed to different people. One of the earliest political figures that I got exposed to was, you've probably heard of him, a guy called Destiny, who still streams on Twitch. He didn't do politics very much back 10 years ago, but he was one of the first live streamers, and he was a edgy opinion boy, and his perspective was very similar to my own. Edgy, libertarian, very self-centered. But my perspective on politics was challenged a little bit when I took an AP World Government class. In my senior year of high school, we had a phenomenal professor at Beverly High, I think Professor Hinojosa, who really opened me up to the idea that there was a lot of ambiguity to governance that I hadn't really considered before, that it wasn't just a binary, like, are you good at it or bad at it? Are you smart or dumb? And that understanding ambiguity, I think, opens one's perspective up. I also had a friend at that time, a very unlikely friend who was an adopted immigrant from Brazil who had had a very difficult childhood. And she was brown and had a very different perspective on life. So, but my worldview was getting pulled in a bunch of different directions. And when I went to college, I decided instead of going into a hard science, I would go into political science, which I hated. So I switched to sociology because political science was full of stuffy know-it-alls. And I really, really enjoyed that. Destiny got more political with time, still my favorite live streamer up at that point. And I was a prominent member of his community because I'd occasionally go on and argue with him. Over the years, this would happen more and more frequently. I moved further and further to the left, college education, exposure to different people, and further radicalization of the online left-leaning pipeline, 10 years ago, there really wasn't that much in the way of like a prominent left-leaning political base online. Now it's very, very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, So with time, I did this more and more, and I finished my degree. I got a degree in sociology with a minor in communication. And after I graduated, it's like, well, okay. I came from a family with a decent amount of money, but I'm kind of shit out on my own now. I'm no longer in Los Angeles. I'm up in Northern California, and the job market there is just trash, and I have to wait a bit before I can move because my partner is still finishing their degree. So in the meantime, fuck it, I'll stream. Why not? And because I had a little bit of prominence within Destiny's community, I had kind of like a pre-existing audience who would check me out, like, oh hey, look, this asshole went ahead and made something, like let's look at
Right.
that. And yeah, I guess over the course of maybe 2 or 3 months, the numbers that I was getting went from a fun little hobby to wait, I'm making more than minimum wage to wait, I'm actually making enough to, you know, call this a potential career. And since then, it's just been up and up. I'm a libertarian socialist, a very big fan of the idea that people should be in charge of their own lives. And I'm very much of the opinion that many of the systems people believe are meritocratic and liberating are actually quite repressive in nature. And that's generally what I argue against in my stream.
I want to drill down in something. You said that you were never reactionary, and that's something that I guess is I identify with too. Do you know why? Because like it seems like a lot of people do. Anytime information that is presented outside their field of expertise or direct experience, they generalize a whole bunch of stuff, assume that they know everything about it, and accept these narratives and get like. I was watching, in prep for this. You had this debate with some, person was like some British guy that was all anti-immigration about 4 months ago, and it's very clear, like you pointed out, that's like you are not relying on statistics and reason. You're relying on a couple dozen of YouTube videos that you've seen that have really upset you.
I
Why
remember
do you
that one.
think? Yeah, why do you think that you didn't get that reactionary kind of gene? Is it something that like your parents instilled in you? Is it something? Is it the books you read when you're? Because sometimes I think the heroic stories that I know that's something that Destiny says. That a lot of times why he thinks he didn't turn out to be kind of like a shitbag is that he had certain heroes that had certain ideals, and that was very influential to him. Have you ever given thought about like? How can we fireproof people? How can we make people out of sturdier stuff so they don't fall for this reactionary stuff?
Yeah, well, I want to clarify. That's not to say I never had any reactionary tendencies. I mean, when I was a
Sure.
young boy, I still thought like women were kind of silly, and I like it's sort of the latent, almost
Yeah.
default notions we're given when we're younger, especially 10, 15, 20 years ago. I imagine now it's maybe a little different. But honestly, I think it's the reason I didn't really go down that road, I think was in part because of two things. One, I had very good parents, and still do, of course, love them. And two, because I liked gaming more than I liked the people who played those games.
Mm.
One thing that I've noticed is a lot of people who get into reactionary politics have hardcore parasocial relationships with online figures, many of whom are young boys who got lucky being very good at video games and have made a career off of it. And a lot of these people have categorically terrible opinions. Many of they just very bad, and it's a lot of it's because they're young, they're impressionable, they're very wealthy, and they everything that they have in their life is legitimately a product of their skill. If you're wealthy because you're one of the best League of Legends players on earth, that's literally your skill. I mean, that's one of the few environments where meritocracy is actually a legitimate possibility. And because of that, I think it makes these people very arrogant and very unintrospective. And a lot of people who watch these people pick up on those views, and it disseminates and it diffuses. And that sort of through osmosis, they absorb that entitlement without any of the actual skill that propelled those people to those positions initially. I just liked the fucking games. So I didn't spend my time watching other people play the games. I just played the games myself, and I sucked at it. But I legitimately think that's actually like a really big difference in the exposure people get, especially when they're young. Because now I can watch other people play games online, but I'm old enough now to understand what they're saying and why they're saying it. But when you're like 12 or 13 years old and you're watching somebody play like Fortnite or whatever,
Yeah.
these people are gods to you. And their views, even if they don't come out and just say, like, I think Jews are controlling the world, they don't have to be overt with it or anything, but just
Right.
the little subtle tendencies. That's why I get so happy with progressive, popular game streamers. I know Alpha Rad, for example, is a big one. It makes me really happy because I know there are a lot of young people who watch them, and they don't need to be turned into communists or whatever. But when they're watching that, I know they're not picking up on these subtle inclinations that may have led so many other people in a bad place. Yeah. Anyway, a bit of a tangent, but I do think that has had a
No,
huge
no.
impact on
It's unfortunate because
culture.
like I felt like that in the early days of Bald Move, when we're covering because I've been increasingly progressive over the last 10 years, but like I never intended that to be political, as I
Hmm.
just want to talk about TV with my friends and my fellow fans. But like every once in a while you come across like Breaking Bad. It's hard not to talk about Breaking Bad without talking about the failures of the US healthcare system, because
Hmm.
that's essentially the true villain of Breaking Bad. And like The Walking Dead would have a tricky abortion plot, or Game of Thrones would have a debate about whether, oh, did this person really get raped, and and it was
But did you
and
notice during Breaking Bad how many people hated Skylar?
oh yes, and that's something that
So
we talk
many
about
people.
constantly
Yeah.
in the podcast, how that like kind of I think for most people the sympathies flip before the end of it, but like yeah, things like that where I was able to make like passing comments. And then like 2015 and 2016 came along, and like we'd review the movie Black Panther, which got an amazing amount of like, I can't believe that you're not condemning Killmonger for wanting to kill white people, etc.
Mhm.
And or thinking that he's like, I made an analogy that I thought he's a great villain in the kind of mold of Magneto. Like it's like, yeah, he wants a kind of horrifying shape of the world, but he got there honestly, right? And then you talk about something like Black Klansman, it's nakedly political, and it's like it became harder and harder just to have like neutral talk about entertainment, especially as things have gotten worse and worse. Entertainment, like
Mhm.
how the hell do you talk about a show like The Watchmen on HBO
Well,
last
now
year
there are two
without
different
talking
discussion
politics,
groups.
right?
Yeah, there are two different
Right.
discussion groups for every major piece of media with any political bent now. And you'll see the progressive side and the reactionary side. The progressive side of Breaking Bad was, well, honestly, I think they were mostly just enjoying the movie. But there were some people who really did seem to want to use the movie as a vehicle for pushing hatred of women. I get Marie's annoying, and Skylar's pretty annoying too. But like, if you watch that movie and you come away thinking that Skylar is anything, sorry, not movie, TV show. Um, if you come away from that show and like feel anything but pity for Skylar, like I don't know. Some people project a lot of really
Yeah.
weird shit. You made a comment there how like Killmonger's a little bit like Magneto, and that their hatred is shaped by a very legitimate sort of encounter with the evils of the world. The difference is, to a lot of Americans, the Holocaust is an undeniable, objective, obvious, horrible thing that they don't really question. Whereas black people are still oppressed.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Okay,
Are
buddy.
we the baddies? Are we the baddies? Are we create? Yeah. Like that can't be.
A
No,
hundred
no, it
years from
can't be
now, it's going to
that.
be the same thing. There are going to be historical pieces about black people. So like right now, for example,
Mhm.
the film. Sorry, this is a tangent, but right now the film Django. Um,
Sure.
right. Wonderful film. Great. Were people mad about it? Sure, of course. It's a Tarantino film. There are going to be people mad about it. Did it inspire this massive wave of people angry at the idea of a black man killing slave owners? No, at least relative to the size of the movie and the buzz that it stirred, I feel like people mostly accepted it because most Americans look at that movie and they're like, okay, he's a black guy in the 1850s. Oh, yeah, all right, okay, we get it. And 100 years from now, they're going to be saying the same goddamn thing about today, and we're going to look comparatively just as silly. They're going to be sympathetic tales of like tragic like black men and women who are born on the streets and rise up to lash out at the system that oppressed them, and they in the future are going to go, well, obviously, I mean, look at that, of
Yep.
course, yeah, but we don't see it today, so it's just a matter of time, I guess.
And I guess that's one thing that, from my personal experience, like growing up super religious and conservative in a conservative area of the country, um, I had my head so far up my ass about things like, gay rights and especially, I mean, that was a hot button issue in my community. that it's like I kind of never I'm really sensitive to seeing those patterns of thought in other places, and I think that's why, because I remember, it's funny, you did the 1350 video, and I did,
Yes.
like, a couple weeks before that I did an analysis of kind of like racial, police stats and stuff like that, very along similar lines. But I remember the day that someone hit me with that. And I was like, it was like 15 years ago. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, what if everything I've been told, like, because at that point, everything I've been told about religion was wrong. I was kind of like I was open to new ideas, like, God damn, what if, there's just something wrong with black folks?
Yeah, you
And
could
I'm
have
like,
taken the
well,
red pill. Yeah.
and instead I rolled up my sleeves. I'm like, I'm actually going to look at both sides, quote unquote, both sides of this issue. And like, that's what I try to preach is like, there are very satisfying answers to the question of like why there's racial disparities in crime statistics, and why there's other disparities among sexes and classes and all this other stuff. You don't have to go through to like, just something wrong with the culture. There's actually satisfying answers to be had there. And one of the things I try to do is try to stay atop of the current topics and firewall people against, like, what is the bullshit that's going to come out after this particular issue. Can I get ahead of that so that when you're having these conversations with your friends and family, you're not going to get blindsided by stuff like that can take you to a dark place.
Yeah.
um
This is one of my main criticisms as well with the anti-SJW community. There are some anti-SJWs who are just that, anti-SJWs. A lot of them are neo-Nazis now, but some of them are just anti-SJWs. And the issue is when you levy out all these arguments about how the feminists are controlling our culture to, disempower white men and blah blah blah. You're essentially setting people up to be white nationalists. You're only a few questions away, really, from arriving at that position. If you already think that the far left and SJWs are teaming up to disempower like white dudes because they're angry or bitter or whatever, it doesn't take very much for you to go like, okay, well, we need to preserve our culture, and okay, what are the vessels through which they're doing this, and so on and so forth. What people are really looking for is satisfying answers. I've argued with enough Nazis to know if you give these people the right answer when it comes to racial injustice, I don't mean like a moral answer that's informed by your axiomatic values. I mean like factual information about why black people are the way they are right now. They scoff at it because it's unintuitive to them. They've been led down a path where the natural framework of the world suggests a genetic explanation, and that's the only answer they have. So anything else sounds like useless it's like with sycophant, essentially. Like you're coming at them with, okay. So I know it seems like black people are just less intelligent, but let me give you a 2-hour dissertation on sociology, very far left academic discipline, to explain to you why that's not the case. That's how it seems to them. So they don't want to get suckered by it. They don't listen. They just have their talking points. It's very unfortunate. There are a lot of people these days who I think are very deeply rooted in this hereditarian worldview. And I don't know how effectively they can be pulled out of it.
I mean, I think it's all facts and figures, right? Like it's harder to explain. Like it's a satisfying explanation, but it's like, I try to make analogies with people. What I like to do, and I think, I was watching this video of you arguing with this person, this English anti-immigration person. And I think you just have to keep like gently, without any kind of anger, like, well, what do you think the problem is? It's the culture. Well, what do you mean by that? Because like, and you can hear the hesitation when you start getting to like, well, I don't want to say something racist, right? Because the other thing, I guess, from my background is I know what it's okay. So when we're going through, pre-2000, this like big upheaval, like gay marriage is a big thing, right? And I was on one side, and increasingly a lot of my friends that I enjoyed spending time with, progressive friends, were on the other. And like if I would have a conversation about like, pros and cons of gay marriage, very quickly I'd have a lot of my friends calling me things like a bigot and a homophobe and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, I know inside of me I don't really hate gay people. I just don't want them to be able to get married for reasons. And the reason, like, I just have this kind of like general unease. Like, I couldn't articulate it because, like, I don't want to say I hate gay people because I don't really hate gay people. It's just I'm uncomfortable with that idea.
Hmm.
So then when I get like, I'd see a headline about like, well, the reason you don't want gay people to get married is because, you need that nuclear relationship is the best thing for a child and blah, blah, blah. And you're like,
It's
oh,
like,
that's the
oh
reason,
yeah, yeah, of
right?
course, naturally. Like, oh, that's what I thought. Oh, there's a reason, you know?
Exactly, and that's why I feel like people like Sam Harris do, and Jordan Peterson do so much damage because they just throw into the atmosphere intellectual reasons that people can latch on to justify. Again, did I hate gay people? Did I want no? And then there is like, growing up in a rural community, there's a stark difference between like systemic racist, people that just kind of go along with the system and kind of have their head in the sand, or
Mhm.
versus like actual, virulent KKK
In
racists.
most parts of America, in
Mm.
95% of dinner tables, virulent racists aren't treated well.
Right.
It's mostly a matter of people's passive acceptance for that discomfort you were talking about. And I agree with you. And that's why I think Jordan Peterson is such a fucking coward, too. Because he knows what he's doing. He's providing these affirmative arguments to justify reactionary beliefs, but he never actually states the reactionary belief outright. He never says, this
Right.
is why you shouldn't or should do this or that. He just gives the arguments and kind of shuffles off. Maybe he won't be doing
Do you
that
think
anymore.
do you think he knows what he's doing?
I think
Or
he
do you
knows
think
exactly what
he's
he's
just an
doing. He's a
older
very smart
do you
man.
think he's well, I mean, here's the thing. Or do you think he's an older guy that's uncomfortable with trans people and is just doing the same thing, and like it also started getting him notoriety and people fawning over him? And I mean, I don't want to do the controversial like, what if Jordan Peterson actually good guy?
No, no, of
Uh
course, of course. No, he's a
it's
bad guy no
more
matter
just
what.
like,
I think he knows what
yeah.
he's doing. His initial rise to prominence, we have to remember, it wasn't for his philosophy or for his self-help. It was for his
Well,
opposition to the C-16 bill in Canada, which was an incredibly milquetoast, virtually meaningless bill, but he was able to fearmonger it so effectively that it skyrocketed him to international prominence. And the way he lied about it so confidently, while managing to avoid answering direct questions that would challenge any of the fears that he had built up in his audience, I think he knew exactly what he was doing. I think he's a snake. Um, but hatred is a very strong word. You talk about discomfort. I think that mostly is it. I think that it takes a lot for a person to hate another person. It's a very personal direction of energy that isn't really reflective of the average reactionary tendencies. Take trans people, for example. And I know this because I've argued about trans people. Fuck, it feels like almost as much as I've argued about socialism and or race realism. Um,
it's the subject that generates by far the most interaction on this podcast because it's something that even amongst quote unquote liberals, they're kind of like, oh, this feels, I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, it's intuitive. It makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable. They
Yes.
feel that discomfort. Now, of course, if you actually parse it out and break down the arguments, the existence, validity, happiness, whatever of trans people, these are very easily justified. You can do it logically. It's not, you don't even have to like do any weird moral presuppositions. But it doesn't matter. For a lot of the people you argue with, it's just over and over and over again a fight against this intuitive revulsion
Yes.
they feel, which is almost an unwinnable battle because intuition is inexplicable to the person who holds it as it is unassailable to the people who don't. Which means they don't really have the ability to challenge it. Challenging intuition is very difficult.
Well, it's not even intuition. It's kind of like I see this all the time when you have reasonable people that are forced to argue about a subjective opinion, like in pop culture, like is the latest Star Wars good or bad? A lot of the times, and in Star Wars, that's maybe a bad example because that gets tied up into social justice warrior anti-social justice warrior bullshit. But let's say any given television season is it good or bad? Some people like it, some people love it, some people hate it, some people are in between. And in fan communities, like at the end of the day, it's just like, well, I just don't like it.
Mhm.
But that's not a good enough answer, right? So they have to increasingly come up with ideas of why they don't like it, or I like this thing. And it's almost like the first time you eat pickles as a kid. Did you like pickles? Maybe some people did, maybe some didn't. Most of us are grow to have adult taste and realize, hey, pickles aren't bad. I wonder how much of this stuff is just subjective. Like, this or like trans people. It's weird and it's new and it's a flavor I'm not familiar with, and I'm just going to, instead of leaving at that and be like, well, maybe I'll be open to trying or learning some stuff. It's just like you gotta put some kind of like concrete shape to that general discomfort with it, and it comes out as transphobia,
Well, yeah,
and
people are
then
always trying to
people get
rationalize their
hardened, or
feelings.
yeah, and then those feelings can be, depending on what kind of discourse you have, what kind of friend circles, where you grow up, what kind of parents, that feeling can calcify and harden into something, or it can soften and be influenced. But I don't know. I do think that pop culture does a lot for us to allow, it's a medium for us to kind of like try out other people's like lives and put on their shoes and walk around them a bit. And I think that's one of the reasons why it seems like progressives win the culture war more often than not in the long term, because it's really hard to hold on to that just subjective opinion of dislike when you're confronted with people's genuine pain or genuine joys.
I also think people who are capable of introspection just tend to make better art. There's a reason why artists have always leaned progressive.
Yeah,
I mean, of course, there are deviations, but
exception.
just as a whole, the fascist dictatorships have always targeted the artists, or resistance has always come from within communities of art, whether that be cinema or television or even painting. And it's not surprising to me at all. And I do think we're winning the culture war in that respect, if nothing else. If you take a look at, for example, the direction movies and shows and cartoons are all heading in, it's undeniable that we're seeing a significantly, greater influence from progressives. And some of these pieces of media do it poorly, and some of them do it well. Of course, the discourse around Steven
Sure.
Universe has been almost unavoidable online over the past 6 or 7 years. But even newer stuff is I think subtly infusing those values in a way that I think is quite compelling. And these values are incredibly defensible. That all people should be treated equally and with dignity. Fundamentally, that you should be comfortable with who you are and be who you want to be, and to not hurt other people. These are very, very simple schoolhouse values. We're not talking, we're not talking about like some sinister attempt at indoctrinating the children. These are values any child should have. Um, and you mentioned earlier that discomfort people feel, and the fact that if it's directly challenged, people get a little bit defensive. And that's one of the reasons why I think the online left has dropped the ball over the past couple of years when it comes to advocacy for our ideas. It's one of the things I try to address with my channel, where I feel that leftism and progressivism doesn't have to be this monolithic, gate-kept, very pure sort of ivory tower of
Sure.
incredibly informed behavior, but rather that it's a spectrum, and we all move over, and we move over best, mind, when we're not being shamed by the people we're moving towards.
Right.
Yeah, so it's more about challenging these ideas and leaving the people untouched. I try to do that for the most part.
No, there should be like a soft border where people can come in and maybe they got some mud on their shoes, and you got the tougher kind of rough and ready people on the outside. You get the mud room of discourse where it's like, hey, you know what? Got some mud on your shoes. Let's scrape that off, and then
Yeah, yeah.
and welcome you further into, now you got your shoes clean. So let's go into the main house. Hey, by the way, we take our shoes off in the main house because we got this nice carpet, and you just keep on inviting them further and further in, and educating them as you go. But like too often, I think it's a stereotype that like leftist discourse spaces are more hard shells, that like if you got the muddy shoes, fuck you, it's not our job to clean your
Yeah,
shoes.
it's a pristine dining room in the middle of a swamp, and you have to arrive there completely filth free, and then you can come in. But otherwise, no.
But I understand like where the frustration of people who've had, muddy footprints in their fucking house for generations, that's frustrating. And I think that's why guys like ourselves, white dudes, that don't have that experience of just being, shit on all the time. Where men and women of our type can be kind of the mudroom attendants, like, hey, we can help you get your shoes clean. This isn't the 1,000th time we've had this conversation with a person, and it's also not directly affecting us, so there's not that emotional kind of like charge to it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, no, well, I completely agree, and not only is that valuable, I think it's quite fun, to be honest, as well.
yeah.
Um,
Well, I wanted to talk to you about your like convert your persuasion style because it's a
mhm,
little bit more smash mouth than mine. But I noticed because like I was going through a couple of the debates you had, and like I was sitting there and I'm like, because you and I come from different backgrounds, and I saw some people make statements, and I'm like, well, man, I that could come out of my mouth 20 years ago, and I think Vosh is kind of beating up on him a little bit too much. But I do like overall, it feels like you have almost like a big brother energy where like you smack him on the ass or like you give him noogies on the head, but then you kind of like back off is that something you consciously do, or are you just kind of winging it when you're having these conversations? Do
no,
you have like,
it's
methodology for?
yeah, it's something I try to do. When I'm debating people or arguing with people, I'm never trying to convince the person I'm talking to, unless I'm talking to a very large public figure, in very scant cases, in which case their knowledge or their affirmation is worth more with regards to my time. But usually when I'm debating people, what I'm trying to do is convince the audience. I would hope people who've watched me for a while will recognize that while I can be incredibly mean to people when I disagree with them, I am also unbelievably kind to people who I think are making an effort to move left. I have never in the history of this channel seen a person make an effort to do better and punish them for it. It has never happened once. I'm incredibly doting to those people. And I think it's a stick in the carrot method. A lot of people who are on the right are so because they've been led in by the perceived strength of the demagogues who they watch online. You know, you have people like an obvious example is Ben Shapiro, of course. You know, talks fast, big brain, debate lord. He's kind of a meme in lefty circles, but we have to recognize he's very popular to people on the
Right.
right. And a lot of that is because he presents this facade of indefatigable debate prowess, incredibly intelligent, um, that helps people see past him being a dweeb for the most part. It doesn't. I mean, he's also quite dishonest. But sticking just to
Sure.
the aesthetics of the presentation, that's why he only debates college students, of course. Because if he debated somebody who knew what they were doing and was prepared on the topic and brought research material with them, he would be lucky to come away with a draw. And that perceived strength is something fairly unique to the right. Left leaning content creators don't really do that. The biggest left leaning content creators are either newscasters or queer, queer poly video essayists who voice their scripts in a room with Christmas lights illuminating their face. It's a very different aesthetic. I think what a lot of people, what a lot of boys need is just a smack. They need to be shown that the people they look up to online are fucking idiots. They're very dumb. They're only impressive because they've made dozens of videos where they talk down on YouTube videos to a person who doesn't get to speak back to them. I'm mean to them. I'll mean to you if you agree with them. But at the end of the day, I hang up the towel and I'm happy to have you come over and hear my arguments whenever you want. It's worked for me so far, but I've had to adjust my perspective on this quite a bit since I started the channel.
All right. Well, I want to move on to the main event, which is you're kind of the first socialist I've had on the podcast. I've had conservatives, I've had libertarians, I've had tons of liberals and other progressive types, but you're like um, you're a big deal socialist. And I like, again, as I said, I like your brand of socialism because it's not just like hey, what's it look like in Star Trek Utopia land, which that's the future that I want to go to. It's more of like, what are the baby steps so we get how do we get there? So I kind of want, as the first representative socialist on Three Right Turns, what do you see socialism as? And then I want to start talking about like what are some things we can do in the current American climate to make, if those ideas are good, to make those ideas more conducive. What kind of environment we can create to make those ideas actually take shape and take flight and start progressing.
Yeah. Well, socialism is democracy, but everywhere. Um, as far as I'm concerned, socialism is just freedom. A lot of people have a lot of really weird ideas about socialism. When they think of it, they're like, Stalin, And I think anyone who watches my channel knows I'm just as critical of these figures as I am of anyone on the right. They should watch any of the dozens of videos I've had arguing against, authoritarian communists, or I don't even think they're communists personally, but
Yeah,
um,
quote tankies.
one of the biggest issues we have with this country, I think most reasonable people will agree, or at least people vaguely on the left, there are systems in this country that are broken. Healthcare being a great one, our education system being a great one. There are arguments to privatize these systems further, but frankly, if you look at the data, these are just not compelling arguments. They aren't. The reason why is because market logic fundamentally relies on the idea of the supply-demand curve being malleable to the needs of the consumer. That is to say, you want goods that are of a correct degree of elasticity. So, for example, this chapstick I have right in front of me, I don't fucking know. What was it, $1? I don't know. If it was $20, I wouldn't have bought it. Great, easy. Market transaction. Healthcare. If I get shot or if I get in a car accident, I will pay any amount of money to forestall my own death. Same goes with food. Same goes in some cases with transportation because that can be necessary to get to a job. These systems, education too, you can't do shit if you don't have an education. You price out elementary school $1,000 a day. I mean, if your kid doesn't have an education, they're not getting a job. These systems are necessary. So decommodifying, that is to say, procuring them without the intent of selling them, is generally a better strategy. If you look at the way other economies handle their education, their healthcare, this isn't even like a philosophical argument. The data just suggests that these things are better. And the reason for this is because market logic has fundamental faults that people are very occasionally unwilling to overlook. I'll give you another example. We call this country, the United States of America, a democracy. And some people will say, oh, it's a republic. And then I'll say, you fucking idiot. Those aren't mutually exclusive. You can be both. So it's a democracy. Great. Not a perfect one, but it is one. So why is it then that I participate in my democracy once every 2 years to cast a vote at a ballot? And very rarely do I see any fundamental change from that. But the actual day-to-day quality of my life, my being hypothetical here, I'm a YouTuber, the average person's life, is determined by my boss. I don't understand. A boss is a tyrant. They very literally are. They can fire you for whatever reason they like. They can't say because because you're black or a woman, but they can say they didn't like your vibe and they can fire you. Your quality of life is almost entirely determined by the generosity your manager or boss sees fit to bequeath upon you. And this is your life. I mean, this is, unless you become a boss yourself, that's why so many conservatives sell the fantasy of the small, business owner. You become your own boss. Well, yeah, but then people work under you. This system necessitates the vast majority of the population has to live under 40 hours a week under a soft tyranny, which determines their wealth, the quality of their life to a large extent. And I think this is ridiculous. I think this is absurd. We can't call ourselves a free country if the vast majority of people must submit themselves to tyranny if they are to live decent, equitable lives. We see right now in so many ways. I apologize for the preachiness of this pitch, but now I'm into it. I'm having fun. There are so many ways in which this country is crumbling. Our infrastructure, poor investment, our education system likewise. And it feels like getting these things funded properly, fixing these systems, is a game of tug-of-war with the most powerful and influential human beings who have ever lived, the wealthiest people around, the lobbyists, the bankers, the politicians. These people are absurdly powerful. Their interests are different than ours. I don't know why somebody who makes $2 billion a year would care whether or not public education is doing well, or whether infrastructure works when they helipad their way across the United States.
Yeah.
They have no reason to. Their material interest is different. All of the problems in this country that are economic by nature fundamentally come down to the fact that everything is run by a group of people who have a different set of interests to the majority of the population. And that's not democracy. The difference between the worker and the bourgeoisie.
And to be clear, when you were talking about tyrants, we're not talking about just evil bosses here, because it's fundamentally undemocratic for a well-meaning boss, for example, to run a company into the ground. And all the workers that relied on that company, that lived and worked within that company, are now shit out of luck because they had zero say in it. They had no input into it. Like, the idea of self-determination and self-governance it's so easy to understand when we're talking politically, but like economic. That's one thing that I've been trying to talk to people is like, we accept all kinds of restrictions on people's military power. You're not allowed to own certain firearms. You're not allowed to have a private army in this country. We accept all kinds of limits on people's political power. We have term limits. We have limits to how much you can donate to campaigns theoretically. But like, we don't ever want to countenance economic restrictions on people's freedoms. Do you want to be a trillionaire? Go fucking nuts. Do you want to own 1,000 homes? Do you want to own like, $1 billion lot? Like, if you can afford it, then why not? There's like, people don't want to think about just how nuts it is that we have people that are hugely influential to those other systems, military, politically.
We used to recognize the consolidation of power was a bad thing. We used to know this, at least to an extreme extent. Yeah. That's the reason why we moved out of feudalism. What's the justification for being a lord, for example? Well, lords or aristocrats tended to be very wealthy people with private armies who would move to occupy castles over which they had a certain dominion over the farmlands around, and they would own those farmlands, and they would essentially lease them out to serfs, and the serfs would, pay their taxes and farm. Okay, well, what's wrong with that? Clearly, we thought that was a bad system, so what was wrong with it? Well, they didn't do anything illegal. The aristocrat inherited the rights and the armies they needed to secure that castle. So what was wrong with it? Everything was legal. And if we recognize that's wrong, a legal framework which allows one man to have unbelievable control over those around him at no fault whatsoever of the people who work the land, why are we okay with this? The system we have today is fundamentally no different. What it is more efficient. But the fundamental relations between people who have control of the means of production, the ability to produce wealth, to produce things, and those who must work to produce those things, that relationship has essentially remained unchanged in its fundamental form for thousands of years, since agriculture. And if you recognize that, and it doesn't matter, by the way, whether or not the wealthy people, as you said, are good or bad people, a generous, kind, benevolent king is a king nonetheless. I would still rebel against the monarchy. And if you recognize this is a fundamental problem, that everything that's being run in this country is being run by people with interests different than ours, that all of the benefits we get from our education systems to our infrastructure are the bare minimums they see necessary to provide us to maintain the general efficiency of the economy, because that benefits them, of course. What do you do about it? And the answer to this, I say, immediately, is market socialism. I think the best thing we can do is, through legal means, if possible, to move this country in a direction where its firms, its workplaces, are either decommodified, that is to say, they are run as a nonprofit, or that they are collectively owned by those who work there. Worker cooperatives are already popular, and the evidence suggests they are effective and very capable of replacing traditional firms in many respects. And I do believe, based on the evidence, that worker cooperatives have a significantly higher degree of economic viability and worker satisfaction, that moving in that direction would be the best possible thing we could do for our economy, to control where you work at, to have a say where you work at. And what's more, this eliminates the fundamental distinction between the haves and the have-nots. There are no longer individuals who singly control massive swaths of property. Groups of people do. And all these groups of people share a common material interest. And with that, we eliminate the fundamental divide that has kept people in governance from meaningfully addressing the concerns of the average member of population.
Let's talk about co-ops, because I think that's a new concept for people. It's kind of overwhelming when it's like, okay, well, what's some baby steps towards a more fair, democratic economic enterprise? And like, oh, let me tell you, co-ops. So those weird things where farmers buy their chicken feed at, and you might know, like, I've got a ready example regionally here, because the Party Source, the largest liquor store in North America, just across the Ohio River in Covington, Kentucky, is a very large and successful co-op, worker-owned co-op. So I have a nice regional example. Hey, do you like Party Source? Pretty, employees are all motivated, super helpful, seem like they're all chill and friendly, and they don't have the just like fucking hate you as a customer kind of attitude you see at a lot of places. Well, it's a co-op. what is a co-op, and how do we get those ideas out? How do we encourage their formation in America? Because like the downside is, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm taking a lot of risks to create a business, and then I hire employees, and then I guess I share everything equally with them. Like, well, they didn't share. How do you how do you overcome the objections to co-ops, and then how do we encourage their formation
Of
and
course.
adopt it?
A worker co-op is any private firm which is owned, private being sort of a nebulous term here, that is owned collectively by those who work there. They can still subcontract, of course. Like, say, for example, if they need a window repaired, they don't need to hire the window repairman and make them a part of the company. But the fundamental goal of a worker cooperative is for the workers, by the workers. A lot of people think the system fundamentally doesn't work because, like, oh, everyone's managing everything. And rest assured, not everyone's a manager at a worker co-op. Everyone's an owner. You all get to democratically participate in the decision-making of this place. One of the biggest problems we have with privately owned firms, and I think anyone who's worked in an office environment for any length of time will know this, is that bureaucracy in the traditional firm environment is as inefficient as the old aristocracies of the feudal world. And the reason for that is because they're non-democratic. The people who are doing the work aren't putting in any of the decision making when it comes to what they're doing with that work. So people who are quite skilled at what they do are being hamstrung by the relative ignorance of their managers, who are only doing what they were told to by their managers, and so on, until you get all the way up to the top and nobody cares anymore. For a worker co-op, everyone gets a say, and that's almost mandated by the model there. Additionally, everyone owns it collectively. We have something here in America, I think that all varies, but the right of first refusal is the idea that if a business goes under, before it's sold off to the banks or what have you, the first people the defunct enterprise is potentially sold off to is the people who worked there previously. Well, you spent 10 years here. Why don't you get a shot at running it? And if this is done collectively, what you recognize then is that the combined effects of democracy allowing everyone to participate and thus be invested in the work they do, and people who actually are doing the work are in charge of how the work is being done, you see a significantly more productive enterprise. And the data supports this for the most part. I'd like to see quite a bit more data. I'd like to see more co-ops. I'd like to see this country start incentivizing worker cooperatives. I would like to see maybe scant tax breaks for companies that are willing to adopt greater degrees of workplace democracy. I would like to see worker cooperatives being easier to start as a legal framework, because right now they're quite difficult. I'd like to see banks perhaps give favorable loans to these enterprises. They're more efficient, they're more ethical, they work better, they stay around longer, and they are much more resistant to price shocks, which means that they aren't nearly as susceptible to any of the fuckery we get with these once every decade recessions that seem to be sort of an inevitable product of the way our economy works today.
Yeah, it's really because when we contemplating adding employees over on the Bald Move side, that's one of the things my partner and I were kind of excited to do. It's like, well, let's reform this company not as a partnership but as a co-op. And I tell you what, it's hard to find a lawyer that knows how to structure a company like that. And what you said about getting bank loans, it's actually fairly hard for small enterprises to get bank loans. Period. You end up having to take a lot of personal debt on, and but like getting a bank to sign off on like a co-op type entity, it's often a non-starter. So I feel like there's quite a bit of like education. But yeah, like any kind of policy, you mentioned tax breaks, the right of first refusal is interesting too. Like if a company's going under, can instead of that just like getting thrown to the banks to carve up and the creditors, I imagine a lot of cases when companies are going under, it's just not possible to save it. But like if it is, and the employees could, why couldn't they?
Yeah, of course. You also mentioned entrepreneurship, by the way. There's one of the easiest solutions to this is that entrepreneurs in a society which is trying to promote worker co-ops maintain sole control of their company until they make back their investment, or some percentage of it, perhaps 150%, something to that effect. The idea being like, okay, if you want to preserve your risk, fine. You maintain private control of this company until you're paid out in full for that risk. And after that, you and everyone else who works there become a part of the same democratic entity. There's also the separate argument that in a worker cooperative sort of oriented society, the risk would be shared amongst those who initially start up. I mean, if you're trying to make a worker co-op with 5 other people, there's no one person there who really is shouldering the risk singly. They're all sort of collectively working towards that goal. Um, the risk argument, what it comes down to me, and there is a legitimate element to it, because sometimes
Mhm.
making a business is very, very risky, and I recognize that. My
Often.
father, yeah, my father has made a few businesses in his time. I recognize how difficult and how stressful it can be. Um, but with regards to entrepreneurship, I feel like this country has instilled in entrepreneurs an almost deific reverence. The entrepreneur is a singly intelligent, risk-taking, daring go-getter, a modern pioneer. You know, crossing out across the Mississippi to see what lies beyond. When in reality, at least according to the data we have when it comes to starting up small businesses, very often the workers who are hired, who are brought on in new businesses, work just about as hard as those entrepreneurs do. Anyone who's been a part of a small startup business knows for a fact that entrepreneur is having a lot of tough conversations with workers in the back saying, hey, listen, we're just starting up. I know this really sucks, but I'm going to need you to work overtime on regular hours or with no hours. This is really, really tough. I'm really sorry. I hate to do this to you. And very often it becomes a cooperative risk, a cooperative sacrifice, even if only one person actually owns the enterprise. That doesn't happen every time, but it's not at all uncommon. I just think sometimes people go overboard with emphasizing the influence entrepreneurs have over the workers beneath them.
What other, because you mentioned also market socialism. What does that mean to you? Because I've heard some people describe as like implementing a universal basic income as a form of market socialism. Like, what is market socialism? Uh, what does it mean to you? And how do we implement more of that in this country?
Socialism requires 2 fundamental things. Proper socialism, in the old sense, in the Marxian sense, it requires the abolition of the commodity form. That is to say, no longer are goods produced for the sake of them being sold. The market is gone. And secondly, that workers seize the means of production. That is to say, the economic faculties of this nation are now in the hands of those who work them, who benefit from them. Market socialism fulfills one of those 2 requirements. It fulfills the second one, where the workers control the means of production. But you maintain the commodity elements. You maintain the markets. And there are problems with markets. There are a lot of problems with markets. Right now, for
I think we've
example,
seen a few in the last 10 years or so. Yeah, there's some problems with
we've seen
markets.
here on the West Coast quite a few over the past 2 days. Where do you live?
I live in Cincinnati, right in the heartland.
Gotcha. Well, over here on the West Coast, Oregon is red, Northern California is orange, and
I've seen the photos. It's terrifying.
it is legitimately terrifying. It's like a Doom
In
level.
end of days is the aesthetic you guys are rocking out there.
And this was done so a couple hundred people could be wealthier. And that's legitimately it. That's it. If they really wanted to, all of the coal and oil and what have you barons could have in the 1970s, back when the data was conclusive, looked at it and said, okay, we're destroying the planet. All right. I don't want to stop being wealthy. I don't want to stop being powerful. We will gradually transition our overwhelming wealth into investing in alternative energy sources. We could have kickstarted a green revolution back during the Reagan presidency, if he'd had it, and we could have been done with it. But it was far more profitable for them to continue driving it into the ground. Now we're trying fracking. Joe Biden's unwilling to condemn fracking, and he's supposed to be the progressive wing of this electoral sham.
Sure.
We're running through right now. And what all of this is an externality, which is an economic term which refers to a byproduct of a market transaction, which is not felt in the transaction itself. It can't be monetized, at least not without additional legislation. And that is a market issue right there. I don't think markets on their own are singly capable of addressing the economic needs of human beings. I think that there are some very severe problems with them sometimes. The hospitals, transportation, education, and maybe even further. But I think we can't even begin to address those problems until the workers, the people, the voters of this country are in charge of its economic facilities. We can't even have that conversation because right now we're just playing tug of war with billionaires who clearly don't give a fuck what they do to this planet or to the people who live on it. And as long as we're playing that game of tug of war, we're going to keep losing. They're quite a bit stronger than us. We need to win that game. We need to abolish the bourgeoisie. We need to implement market socialism. And after that, when the right people are in charge, the people are in charge, I think then we can have some tough conversations about, market commodification and what that's doing to our world. What can we do to fix it?
So we talk about the importance of co-ops and market socialism, and you mentioned I get the opinion that you are skeptical that Joseph Biden is going to be the savior that is going to single-handedly turn around the American enterprise as well as the world to solve all of our problems. So I imagine the solution is just to not vote, right? You don't want to, if you got evil and more evil, the only ethical choice is to abstain from the system, right? Is that good? Is that good? What do they call it? Praxis on this side of the aisle?
Nice bait. Voting is like everything else, a meager way by which you can guide the course of the world towards a slightly less shitty direction. If you're on a minecart track, rapidly heading towards a boiling flame pit, and you can reach out to pull a lever that'll dump you into a spider pit that gives you a slightly higher chance of survival, then you do that, and you always do that. I'm excited by a Joe Biden victory, not because I think he'll fix anything, but because I think he won't. What I think will happen, what I'm hoping will happen, is to some people a spider pit might be quite a bit worse than a fire pit. Just imagine that. Right? Yes.
That's one of the subjective opinions we talked about.
Fine. Light spiky pit, like the spikes are only an inch sharp, so you can so it doesn't kill you, it just hurts. Okay, but anyway, what I hope will happen is the same thing that happened during the the Obama presidency, where a bunch of well-meaning liberals who are tired of Bush/Trump will all come up behind this new Democrat, leader, and they'll quite quickly and quite sharply be disappointed by their ineffectuousness, by their dishonesty, by their unwillingness to really challenge the people who are responsible for the problems with this country, and they get disillusioned and they move further left. That's what happened during Obama's presidency. We got 8 years of Obama, the big progressive Obama. Hope change. What did he do? Well, really, really not much, at all. Not with his time, not with the power that he had. We got a heritage plan, healthcare. We got a heritage plan, or a Heritage Foundation healthcare plan. We got a pretty good Iran deal. Credit where credit's due.
Sure.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that one. We got some drone strikes. That was cool. A lot of deportations. That was also cool. A lot of people were disappointed. And then 2016 rolls around and Bernie Sanders nearly takes it from Hillary Clinton. Out of nowhere.
It moves the conversation from healthcare is just unpractical. There's just no way we're going to get it done to everyone running on some version of universal healthcare platform in 2020.
Yeah,
so
out of nowhere. He was nothing. He was nobody before that. He was an independent senator from Vermont. Yeah, and he showed up and he nearly took it from Hillary Clinton, the redheaded stepchild of the Democratic establishment, out of nowhere. And you know what happens in 2020? You know what happens this election season? Because everyone's so terrified of Trump, Bernie does worse. The country's as a whole has been pushed farther left, but Bernie does worse because liberals aren't willing to gamble another Trump presidency on a high-risk candidate like Bernie Sanders. They go for something safer. 58% of people who voted for Joe Biden did so on electability. So, clearly, the presence of Trump as a threat is preventing people from moving further left. You give them a Joe Biden, you give them some more disappointment, you give them another 4 years to stew in frustration as he does nothing. I think that in 2024, we have a shot at a really strong left-leaning contender.
And it's not just the it's that's why on Three Right Turns I try to emphasize the local and state because one of the reasons you could say that Obama was ineffectual is because there's only so much a president can do. He's got the bully pulpit, he's got executive orders, But if you don't have a Senate behind you, if you got a divided House, then it's hard to make progress.
That's
So,
true.
but I think that's
You know what he
when I
did that pissed me off the most? All the things Obama did.
what's that?
It was the judicial appointment near the end of his last term. When the
Oh,
Republican
right.
Senate refused to confirm because they said he was a lame duck president, even though he had like 11 months left.
Right.
He should have just appointed them and said that they were engaging in dereliction of duty. This is something the Republicans are going to keep doing, by the way. They're going to do it with Biden too. Just a flat, objective obstruction of governance. That high road shit doesn't work with them, and I think
No,
it's set a very bad standard too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lot more radical in what I would like our politicians to do legally. Like, if we're concerned that we've lost a judiciary, pack the courts. Well, what if the Republicans do it? Well, they did.
Yeah,
They did.
they're all,
Found a whole bunch of open vacancies, including the Supreme Court, and they stacked it in a legal way that they could do, and no one gave a shit about. So, like, why don't we try it? And then if there's a bunch of outroar or uproar and outrage, then we can have those intellectual discussions amongst ourselves and just. But like the idea that we're not going to do it because if we do, the Republicans might do it worse. Like that seems like someone had slept through the first few
the
parts
Republicans
of class
will do anything.
trying to join the discussion. Yeah,
Absolutely anything. We get it's like being in a fight with somebody and they draw a knife and you have a knife and you're like, well, if I draw my knife, they might use their knife on me as they're stabbing you to death. The Republicans they don't care. One of the most important characteristics of a functioning democracy is forbearance. The idea that a party will not use their power should they win to influence the next set of elections, to influence the respective odds. The Republican Party doesn't practice forbearance. So if we practice forbearance, what we're essentially doing is handicapping ourselves. There's no reason why we should do that. If democracy is broken, it's not our fault. They started it. We're only letting them win by refusing to participate in the broken system that they have created.
I also think, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not too, that like I also think that broadly speaking, some of these ideas aren't as popular as they should be. And like I feel like sometimes as leftists we assume that like everybody, all liberals are for Medicare for all, when you go down into polling and it's like I think some of this is just like we have to do a better job advancing the arguments and winning over especially people like myself who live in these areas where I have family who's very conservative still, friends are conservatives, neighbors, the place I live, to have those conversations, to not withdraw into our circles, but like, go out there and evangelize, Medicare for all. Go out there and evangelize the Green New Deal. Nancy Pelosi, I shared this image on my Twitter feed about, she made some dismissive thing about the Green New Vision or whatever, and it's juxtaposed against California on fire. These are like they're ideas that are popular in the sense that like when people hear them and understand them, like defund the police is a term that's not extraordinarily popular, but the actual policy behind it is very popular. And we can go out there and have those conversations and make them more popular. Do our part, because
our ideas are good. They're good ideas. They are. That's why Republicans focus so much on this culture war nonsense. You watch the whole RNC, all the fuck they're talking about is how Antifa radicals are going to burn down your house. First of all, as of today, gender reveal parties have objectively caused more property damage than Antifa could if we switched Antifa out 100 years into the future and then 1,000 years beyond that. Yeah, not even
close. Gender reveal, ultimate villains in America 2020.
Yeah, so we can and what's more, like people will fearmonger like, oh, Antifa did $500,000 of damage in a New York protest last night. I'm actually asking you. I'm asking you to guess how much did the New York City Police Department pay out in settlements in 2018?
I'm gonna pick a big number that's probably too big. 50 million.
$280 million.
Holy shit!
Over a $250 million.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, what's the economic cost of leaving entire communities behind economically?
Oh, it's massive. Yeah.
Like all these kids that are brilliant that flame out in elementary school and junior high and high school because they don't have good parents and they don't have good nutrition and they don't have good access to healthcare.
Antifa could literally go full Tyler Durden and start blowing up skyscrapers with vans full of nitroglycerin, and they would have to work overtime to come close to the not just the cost of the police, but the cost of police brutality. That we're like the New York City Police Department has a massive budget. We're just talking about the money that is spent to people who are brutalized and are awarded settlements. This is a fraction of the total money that the city spends on its police department. It's unbelievable. So that's what the Republicans focus on. It's all this culture war bullshit. It's fear-mongering. And the Democrats, somewhat to their credit, seem to be a little bit more issues focused, as much as I disagree with almost everything they are and do. And then you have people like Bernie Sanders, who is exclusively issues focused. Bernie Sanders never engaged in any of this horse shit. Every speech he did sounded exactly the same. It's like he's like desperately pleading, like, holy shit, do you want healthcare? Do you want healthcare? Do you want your children to be able to swim in the ocean without their skin peeling off? Do you it's very simple, and they're good arguments, and I'm convinced by them. And I think that's really our ticket to victory too. So many Republicans aren't even willing to hear Democrat progressive arguments. So many Republicans aren't willing to hear these arguments because they know the Democrats are insincere. But a new wave of progressive Democrats is coming where they are very obviously sincere with what they believe. People like AOC, Bernie, Ilhan. And that's why the Republicans spend so much media time calling them terrorists, children, bartenders, stupid, idiot, dumb, sluts, whatever. Because they know if you get a hold of people who have got good ideas and are sincere in pushing them, the Republican Party has no fucking chance in the world. Not a fucking chance in the world. So it's culture war. It's going to be culture war from now until the Republican Party explodes or they put us in camps.
There's a lot of resistance when I talk to conservative folks and even, centrists, moderate Democrats about, socialism's ties to authoritarianism, because, an objective, I think, reasonable look at history shows that there was a lot of failed experiments that kind of went down the authoritarian bend. But yet we spend a lot of time, with capitalism. It's something I'm always interested in. It's like we do capitalism, right? Until we have a massive market failure, and then we break out emergency socialism, right? A hurricane hit, so let's flood the communities with money, get them back on their feet, blah blah blah, then go back, or stock market goes up in flames. We got bailouts. We break out emergency socialism. I'm wondering if there's a future where you essentially try socialism and when you have bad economic times, you break out emergency capitalism or something. Maybe we get a little bit more concerned about the bottom line in markets, or because the other thing I guess I'm getting at here is I don't feel like I hear a lot of leftists talk about how we can implement socialism and fireproof it against authoritarianism. Mm-hmm. And because, we don't have a lot of limits on people's economic freedoms. And I think people are attracted to that because it feels like, you can always vote with your wallet. And, it's almost like the same way that there's a vestigial sense that if the kingdom of England is under threat, that the queen can rise from her throne and mount up her on her corgis and defend them against tyranny and whatnot. Like there's those last bastions kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That like the capitalist class is that for America. That like there's just fascism is bad for business, and that they just won't have it at the end.
My main concern is that fascism is actually very good for business.
No. Yeah. But how do we, if we want to take these concerns seriously, because I do, I would hate to live in authoritarian socialist regime. It seems like a real miserable time. How can we fireproof our movement to reject authoritarianism? What are the safeguards we can build into socialism to where we don't have strong men, we don't have cults of personality, we don't have the shit that we see with Trump only left, Is that a real concern? If so, how do we address it?
Yeah, of course it is. Most of the major socialist experiments that people point to all around the world, as failures, are examples of poorly implemented socialism. And I recognize this is a no true Scotsman, so I'd like to qualify my statement here by reciting some Marx. Marx believed two things very fundamentally. One, that the transition to socialism, which was one which should be predicated upon a very particular set of material conditions. That is to say, the correct set of economic, social, cultural relationships, that is to say, you shouldn't just jump from feudalism to socialism, which is, of course, what Lenin attempted to do. And he also believed that socialism was good because people should be free. He didn't care about equality. He didn't care about the idea that everyone should end up in the same position in life or everyone should have the same house or whatever. He didn't give a fuck about any of that. He cared about freedom, that people should genuinely be able to walk the rounds of the earth, knowing that it is their oyster and that, short of harming other people, they are free to do as they will and what they like. Barring obvious subsistence needs. They'll probably still need their Wheaties in the morning. And I think a lot of socialist experiments that we've seen fail have been products of an unwillingness to adhere to these two fundamental beliefs. That is to say, they were not the product of democracy. So many of these socialist countries didn't emerge because the working class rose up, recognized their collective struggle, and seized the state apparatus as their own. Many of them were a product of being a little uncharitable here, but warlords and politicians who were able to secure support either from the middle or from the working class or from the peasantry, and fought wars within their own countries to secure the means of production themselves. And while it's a phenomenal way of winning a war, turning the peasantry and the working class to your side, the issue with that is, well, now the founding example of a society that is meant to be built upon freedom and democracy is one in which a autocrat with a cult of personality has led a militia to overthrow the previous aristocracy. And this isn't a very good starting place, in my humble opinion. What socialism should be built from is something called dual power, essentially power within and without government. Usually this takes the place of a political party and of unions. Unions are very important. They represent the interests of the working constituency, and they allow for the opportunity of a general strike, which is the most powerful tool the working class will ever have. And the party within government is necessary because they can carve out legal and bureaucratic exemptions to further the power of the union groups. They work together. And when the people eventually rise up, the idea is that the working class and the politicians shake hands. They've done it together, and collectively, with a system that is in both of their interests, they rule. They then implement a democracy. This is very, very hard to do. And the fact that it is hard to do is the reason why I think we see so many bad examples. And it's why I don't advocate for a revolution in this country at all.
Yeah,
frankly.
to me, it seems like socialism's like, can humanity fly? Until the Wright brothers, the answer was no, you couldn't. And there's the history is littered with people that tried and failed and splattered alongside cliffs. The Wright brothers had some like small incremental steps. Their first flight wasn't even flight. Did they even get out of the ground effect? I don't know, but they're credited with the first people to fly. I feel like a lot of times, like the revolutionary side of socialism is essentially taking your rickety ass biplane up a mile high cliff and jumping. Whereas I feel like what you're advocating for with like market socialism and co-ops is like Wright brothers. Can we get at a fast run and see if we can float for 100 yards? Great. Let's try to do 150 next time too. And then who knows? Like we might be in supersonic flight 67 years old.
Eventually you don't touch the ground anymore. You're quite good with analogies.
Well, thank you. It's one of the things I'm always workshopping. Like I got a really good one about billionaires and Rick Grimes and The Walking Dead and zombies. And billion cans of beans I can try it sometime. But I think that's the way to go, because too often, you could say the same thing about going from peasant class to democracy. Like how many times did the rabble rise against the overlords and they got put down and like, well, look, we got magic blood and you guys don't. We're always going to be better.
Many of these revolts are lost to history too. We don't even recognize that. Yes. A lot of civilian revolts, were quite embarrassing to the aristocracy that controlled that area. The village was burned, the people were slaughtered, their heads put on pikes, and it wasn't entered into official records. Like, the history is, if I may borrow a phrase, a history of class struggle. And the history is littered with literally tens of thousands of attempts for the working class, for the common folk, to secure peace and prosperity for themselves. It is littered. History is a graveyard of attempts with a couple of shining successes. You do occasionally have socialist leaders who do great good in their lifetimes. Evo Morales, for example, of Bolivia. He has some faults, but if you look at what he did for the people of that country, the literacy rates, the everything, he did really good. Allende, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And there were arguments as well for Cuba relative to the position of that population prior. Even Vietnam has had some successes, though they are undeniably far more authoritarian than I personally am comfortable. Yeah, Lula, of course.
Oh yeah.
And what all of these leaders who I like the most recognized that they were more likely to improve the lives of the people around them by working within the system, building a base of power until you no longer need to work within the system, until people are strong enough collectively that it's not so much a revolution as it is an exchange of power. Whereas many of these bad examples, again, were prompted by military officials, warlords, and politicians, and those with cults of personalities. It's messy business, changing civilizations, but we can focus on the things that matter now. We don't have to get into scary territory. Let's work on worker cooperatives. Let's work on fighting fascism. Yeah.
Let's try to float. Let's try to float. Let's try to glide.
Let's work on building unions back up. Unions in this country
Yes.
are broken. They're unprecedentedly broken. Let's focus on these things. Let's focus on repairing some of the fragmented pieces of our democracy that have laid broken since Nixon. Let's fix executive orders in this country. There are so many things we can do that don't involve crazy big.
Ranked choice voting. Yes.
Ranked choice voting. Third parties. We don't need to
environments. Yeah.
run up to the White House with a banner on. Maybe one day we can. But for now, I think we have easier and more necessary steps to take. I have always been of the opinion that if we were to have a revolution right now, fascism would win, and I would be dead easily, and probably you too, for agreeing with me on some of the things that I say in this discussion.
No, I've often thought it's too late for me to try to straddle the fence. I signed up. I'm a card carrying Democratic Socialist of America member. I'm subscribing to the damn magazines. Like, I'm on a list. And if things broke bad fascist wise, I'm not probably the first one up against the wall, but they'd get to me eventually. Sure, yeah.
Oh yeah. And that is, that is a real and frightening possibility. People joke about that, but you can count on more than two hands the number of countries that have purged socialists from their population after a takeover.
And even a third Red Scare would suck, honestly. Like, to be hounded out of your job or your career, or be disenfranchised, or even jailed for your beliefs. That's something that's happened.
We're trying to make Antifa and possibly anyone who is previously associated with Antifa,
or anyone that shows up at a protest at the wrong time, a felon, and then you can't vote. Oh boy. Hey, how are we doing on time? Because I have one other topic that I thought might be interesting. That's not as big as like how we can do socialism.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we can hit on one more topic for sure.
Okay. One thing I see in the online left that I think is interesting, and I know it's a bugaboo that Destiny has too, is it seems like content creators, they blow up and they have this deal where they're leftists and they're all about seizing the means and fair and equitable division of things. But it seems like a lot of them start to get really shy. All the things you advocate. It's like, hey, if you got you shouldn't keep your salaries and stuff secret. A lot of leftists do seem to be somewhat shy about the crazy amounts of money that they're making out of nowhere. And it's almost like this fear of like, well, gee whiz, if my audience finds out that I'm living more, I've got more than a subsistence level of existence, that they'll no longer support me. Something that we've done in Bald Move since we started is like, we have we call it Empire Business Podcast, where we go and like open up our finances and talk with our fans about like, here's how much money we made and here's where it all went and spent, and like here's our salaries and here's what we're investing in healthcare and et cetera, et cetera. I wish more leftists did that. Like instead of being afraid of the criticism, meet it head on. And like, because I think that what I'm trying to get at is like, we live in a system, right? We live in a society where the amount of freedom that you have kind of comes down to your bottom line. And, if I'm a leftist content creator that wants to have kids someday and I want them to have college, the best way to do that is amass a certain amount of personal wealth. What do you think about that? Like, do you get what I'm saying? And like,
No,
do you
no,
have
I
you're on the up and up? Like you haven't quite gotten into the entrenched rich leftists, out of
I
touch
am
white
very
college
well off. I would
educated.
be lying if I said otherwise.
What
Um,
is, do you have a plan for how to handle that criticism? Or like I've also thought of like, for me, like what if, how much money do I make personally that's enough that I've got like my family taken care of, my kid, because I have a 13-year-old going on 14-year-old, very bright. I want to make sure he can, you know, whatever potential he's got, he can maximize that to however he can. Have you thought of like what's a figure to where like this is enough, and what am I going to do with excess? How can I plug that back into a political system? How can I plug that back into charity? Do you have a plan for that? Or because I feel like that's one thing I think we should all do. We should all be thinking about that and educating our audiences on how economics works and where money gets spent. And so it shouldn't be something that we're ashamed of, like we're generating money. It's more of like, well, what are you doing with it? Are you just buying designer clothes and fancier cars, or what do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah. So the first thing I want to say is I don't think there's anything wrong or hypocritical with a leftist being wealthy or even being a business owner or anything to that effect. I think that leftism is a moral principle, and that the way things are distributed in this world, we have to recognize that being in possession of wealth or being in possession of the means of production, if you're a business owner, gives you a relative position of prominence that you as a leftist can use to better other people. Engels was, after all, Marx's company, and Engels owned a factory. And I can't tell you how much good would be done in this world if every city had a couple of prominent leftist millionaires who would be paying bails for protesters, who would be providing
Sure.
medical care for people hurt, or providing like relief or shelter for homeless folk or any of that crap. And you can't do that if you're living as some ascetic monk. So I don't have a problem with lefties being wealthy. I'm wealthy. What I hope to do with my excess money is eventually start a PAC. Now, for one person to do that on their own, I would definitely need. I have some legal consult. We're nowhere near that point yet. I'm only about a year and a half into this, but what I'd like to do is start a PAC. I've seen how much even a relatively small amount of money, small from a business perspective, like $500,000, can do to influence smaller elections and campaigns, especially since
local. That's a lot of money. That's
Huh?
a lot of money for a local state election. That's a lot of money.
That's what I'd like to see. Because there are a lot of progressive Dems who are starting to run in purple districts in the South that look like they would have really good campaigns if they had the money. They just don't have the money. And fundraising is fucking boring. So what if I just stream, and I could put so much money into that PAC I wouldn't have to pay a dime in taxes. I'm sure I could find a way to make it work, but that's what I would like to do, ideally. I do think lefties should be open about how much money they make. Generally speaking, I can understand why they don't want to. You have somebody like, say, for example, ContraPoints. ContraPoints, a lot of money on Twitter, or not Twitter, sorry, on Patreon. Probably makes $200,000 a year plus ad revenue. If I'd had to take a guess at it. Probably, I'd guess the reason why she doesn't have it listed publicly is because if she did, there'd be a bunch of people going like, I didn't know she was rich, or something to that effect. And then you'd have to have that argument, you know?
Yeah, shouldn't we just have that argument? Like,
Well,
I feel like,
I agree, but other leftists don't like arguing with their
yeah,
audience. I love
especially
arguing with
ones,
my audience, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
especially ones that like might be, in vulnerable populations. I get that, but like, I see a lot of white college educated dude streamers that are kind of showing that same reluctance. I'm like, man, that's where we should definitely lean into that and have that conversation. And I also think it's a perfectly honest question of like, well, how much is enough? How much is enough to secure your future and your family's future, and then what are you going to do with the rest of it? Because
it's never going to be enough. I'm going to take every fucking cent I can from my audience. Okay, it's all going to a good cause. Me. I don't. I think thinking about when is it enough. I feel like it's a very self-destructive mindset to people who have certain tendencies. Some people feel guilty about having money, just stupid. I think that like ultimately, if money is being provided freely to you, as it is here in the YouTube game, of course, like people don't. Yeah. People donate to me for name colors on my site chat. Like I'm clearly not holding their fucking children over their head. Yeah. And if they're willing to do that, I will never feel bad about a cent that I make. I'm honored to be the recipient of so much generosity, and I hope to one day be in a position where I can start putting money together for that kind of thing. I'm hoping by the 2022 election I'm going to be able to. That would be very nice. It's not going to be $500,000 or nothing, but it will hopefully be enough.
A start.
Yeah. To start.
Is that something that's going to be an individual effort, or is there going to be a pact that like other leftist streamers could control? I guess, that's super exciting because you're the first person to actually have asked that question, and they have actually here's my plan, and it's really cool. Yeah. So,
well, I just yesterday bought a home gym, so we've set back the pack timer by just a little bit, but I would know if I could. Here, I'll try to get Hassan into it. That Hassan is probably one of the only lefty people online who I know for a fact makes a lot more money than I do. Streamers make significantly more money than YouTubers.
He's got to have the home gym taken care of.
Oh, he already got the home gym. I'm just catching up to him. With that one. Anyway, yeah. Because streamers make more money than YouTubers. Ad revenue on YouTube is shit these days.
It's everywhere. We're over on the Bald Move side because that's what kind of pays the bills. Swizzbold's more of a fledgling enterprise, but we're 90% supported by our direct support by our fans because especially now, like what little the ads were doing, like after COVID, oh man, like it's really hit the market for podcast ads and whatnot. So we same deal. Like 90% of our operating revenue comes right from people that like us enough to support what we're doing.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Huh?
I'm sorry. I was about to say, like, I just really appreciate the, I know that you're a super busy guy. Because
no. Yeah, no, of course. No, it was actually a super good conversation. Should I disclose? I feel like it's weird for me to have that whole conversation and not say. Chat's gonna act like I'm betraying them, but I answer this anytime I'm asked. It's probably gonna make around $350,000 this year, maybe 400,000, at most. So Hassan,
not bad.
Yeah, Hassan, it's pretty okay. So Hassan's still on top, because I'm confident that motherfucker makes a 7-figure income. Just barely, I feel like.
I don't know. I don't know why. Like Hassan's kind of the guy I'm thinking of because it's an easy, cheap shot, right? Like, oh, you're preaching this, but you're sitting there saying you should tell each other's your salaries and you shouldn't let the bosses have this information. But like, oh, I don't like to talk about my personal finances because
I will say this:
it's not a good look. It's not a good look, and I think it's a missed educational opportunity.
I agree. I will say this. If you're making your money off donations, I do think some people have said Hassan does this. I think Hassan has maybe done it like once or twice. I don't think that's a persistent habit on his part. But I do think if you're making money off donations, you should be upfront with your income and you should never mislead people about you needing that money. When I first started streaming, I would beg for those fucking donations. I'd be like, hey guys, I really want to be able to eat something other than boiled potatoes this week, please God. And sure, that's sincere. Now, we must recognize, of course, that for me to do that, this would be wonderfully exploitative and not at all good. So I think being open about your income, it's unfortunate because if you're open about it, people are less likely to donate. That's just a fact of the matter. If you want more money, the strategy to maximize income is to never talk about your income and to facilitate a parasocial relationship to maximize the willfulness with which people will donate so they get to hear you say their name and so on. I think that can get pretty unethical pretty quickly. Yeah. So I think I do agree there's a better conversation to be had there,
Yeah. And I do feel like it's one of those things where it's like it gets worse over time. Like if it wins the when's the time to kind of like come out with your finances and like start educating people about this? If you've been, it's a lot harder. It's kind of like, I don't know, like a closeted situation, right? Like you've cultivated this thing, and also like I feel like people can get weird about it. Like, you know, if you're hiding it, and it's something that, like, if you're hiding something, it's something that you're on some level shameful or fearful of.
Mhm.
And that can go bad places. Like, you know, that can lead to entitlement. It can lead to, you know, being out of touch with other people's struggles, because you start seeing, you know, because that's one thing I also talk about all the time, is like, this is a rigged system. It's just like, you know, if you've played, what's that game, Cobble Rocket, you know, like your income is like a rocket ship, and punching through that first 50 or 60 miles of atmosphere is where 90% of the fuel
Kerbal
goes.
Space Program. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Now I get it.
Once you get out of the atmosphere, it gets just faster and faster. It's the same thing like in personal economics. Like when I talk to our accountant, it's like, you know, once you have an income of like $100,000-ish, depending on where you live, you can essentially start paying yourself just straight out of dividends and realizing gains from your company, and those things are taxed at a way different rate. And it just starts accelerating. It feels like we should have a system that's the opposite. It should be like, I have this analogy, like the warp drive curve in Star Trek. Like warp 10 is the absolute fastest you can get. It's infinite speed, and every 9.99 is a geometric growth of energy that you have to expend to get that much faster. And so, like, you know, but that's not the world we live in. Like, it's so hard when you have no money, and it gets easier and easier and easier as you get more and more money.
We used to have a very high marginal tax rate, and we don't. And capital gains are taxed lower than traditional income. So if you're making your money off the stock market, you get yeah. My parents keep telling me to put money in the stock market. It feels, I don't think there's anything unethical about that. Fuck them.
No, I mean, it's like
it's so
if you're
weird.
playing the game, like you can shoot 3-pointers outside the out of bounds all day, and they're not going to count, right? Like if you've got money, you absolutely should, because who knows if this stops tomorrow. And do you want to be in a position of strength? Like, that's what I'm saying. Do you want to be in a position of strength from within the system, or a position of weakness? And if you're in a position of strength, then you can advocate and educate people and tell you, this is like, hey, you should still support me, not because I'm becoming an increasingly rich bastard, but look at what I can do with this. Look at how we can all benefit.
Don't you want to make me a rich bastard?
Don't you make your,
The thing is, I mean, past the with regards to how I live my life, once I was able to make, because my income massively varies, you know. A year ago today, my income was like 1/10 of what it is now. So it's difficult for me to say like, oh, I make 100,000 a year. I don't fucking know what my income's going to be. But when I was at the point where I felt like I was making about 100,000 a year, like I felt like an equivalent degree of income, my actual living convenience hasn't changed since then, you know? Once I hit that point, it's been all the rest of it's like in the PAC fund, you know what I mean? Or I buy a home gym sometimes. But for the most part, things are pretty much the same. And it is extraordinary how much being a little well off takes so much of a burden off your shoulders. From being able to eat whatever you want at the grocery store, I used to only buy stuff that was on sale, to getting a car problem and going like, oh, well, this is annoying. I have to spend my day off fixing this, rather than, oh, this isn't a fucking life-ruining disaster. This is my day off and 3 weeks of pay, you know? And I firmly believe, and from everything that I've read, because now we're getting very much into the abstract, from everything that I have read, I think that lifestyle should be attainable to every single person in this country. I think that is 100% possible. With the wealth and the resources we have in this country, if we were to selectively decommodify certain price points, if we were to tax appropriately, that lifestyle where, I mean, if you want a new car, maybe you got to wait a bit, but living your life, that is absolutely attainable to everybody here. And eventually to everyone in the whole world without global exploitation.
That's the thing. Because like if you do the back of the envelope math and you divide the world's
GDP, we're fucking them over so bad right now. Yeah.
But like it's like if we divided the pie evenly, no one would be happy, unfortunately. So we do have to grow the pie. which is why I don't think we're quite done with all the markets yet, because I do think that's a really good way to generate wealth, and we need to generate a lot of wealth so that all the world can have, like, what you're essentially arguing for is a middle class lifestyle for the world.
Yeah,
And man, I get goosebumps when I think about a world where you don't suspect your neighbor, because everyone's kind of in the same boat and everyone's doing fine and everyone's able to maximize their own potential, and we can take care of crises as they come out in a reasoned way. Like it does seem utopian and pie in the sky, and I don't think it's going to happen in the next 10, 20. I try to preach to my audience that it took us 30, 40 years to get into the pit that we're in right now. It's going to take 30, 40 years to rebuild the institutions, to get education levels back, to get people to where they're not in this, oh my God, zero sum game. I got to get mine because, other if I'm not hoarding it, someone else will. Right.
Yeah. We are exploding the pie right now. We can chart the relative level of worker efficiency in this country and in others. Right now Africa is going through a boom. Southeast Asia has been going through one. India is probably 20 years away from being roughly parallel to China in terms of development. And in 20 years, China is probably, at least in most parts of it, because that's a big fucking country, is going to be parallel to the Western powers, and economically they're going to surpass us significantly.
What's going on in Africa, especially how they're this pan-African government and economic coalition that's forming, because eventually, if we get to Star Trek Utopia, we'll have like some form of one world government, right?
Yeah.
These are steps towards it.
It's material conditions. Again, if a country hasn't gone through capitalism yet, we can't expect them to just jump to where we are. They got to have their fun in the sun, with the unethical hoard of wealth from capital owners. Actually, this is a completely other subject, but it is important to talk about the carbon tax. So the world's dying right now. That's not good.
Right.
And we in the West are in a position where we can invest in alternative energy in a way that makes our country wealthier, because we're established to that point. And we may eventually transition to complete dependence on green energy, which would be phenomenal, or if we go nuclear, whatever. But other countries can't do that. So what we probably absolutely definitely need to do is we need to be spending an exorbitant amount of money providing energy for these countries through green means. You invest in their infrastructure. We got to be done with coal and oil. We have to stop. So if that means us spending a couple trillion, us collectively, America, European Union, on getting countries in Africa or in Central America up to par, we got there first. We got lucky, but we're essentially paying down our fucking of the planet, which is, I think, a pretty equitable trade in the long run.
And it's moral. It's something and I remember being a conservative, 20 years ago, in my early 20s, because I'm pretty old.
20 years ago, you weren't alive back then. Come on.
But I remember being a conservative and arguing the positions for, like, cap and trade and carbon credits and stuff. Like, those were right-wing conservative economic solutions to the problem, and somehow they've got transmogrified in the stupid machine to be far left crazy positions now. It's I don't know. It's like Obama tries to implement Mitt Romney's healthcare plan, and he's a crazy socialist.
Yeah, or the Heritage Foundation healthcare. Yeah, and then it's the end of the fucking world.
It's been a trip because I grew up, idolizing like the heroes from Tom Clancy novels who were arch fucking Republicans of the day, and Jack Ryan. If Barack Obama was white and Catholic, he'd be Jack Ryan, the hero of all those Tom Clancy far right novels. Like. It is really breathtaking what's happened to
Obama's a fucking jock, bro. Obama, I can imagine like Obama standing on top of like a Lebanese, embassy, watching a bunch of like terrorist family members getting gunned down while he puts on sunglasses. That dude is he's incredible. Yeah, he'd have to be white and but like he is just very much and he's like the crazy far left socialist.
It's insane. Like I said, as someone of Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, cause I'm always trying to figure out because I feel like there's some secret here that like if I it's like that movie They Live. Like if there's a glasses you can put on, and be like, hey, remember all the people we grew up and think about like I've been watching a lot of '80s action movies lately, like Total Recall. Total Recall is a story of Martians in impoverished Martians in a dying world with no resources, fighting against a corrupt police state, blowing shit up, fighting with police, and they were unambiguously the good guys. Like how did people my age, like Gen Xers, how did Gen Xers grow up on this content and completely forget the moral lessons?
I
Like,
don't. People don't follow anything. Like right now, what we're dealing with is the fact that people have literally no media comprehension whatsoever, and everything, like it's like Fight Club, for example. I feel like you could almost define a generation based on a bad interpretation of Fight Club, where it's a movie explicitly criticizing toxic masculinity and groupthink, and then everyone ends up like watching it and thinking like, oh my god, dude, holy shit, Tyler Durden was based as hell. But you get that too. People watch They Live, and we're still in capitalism. So I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know where we are right now. But it's
And I
not
do think
good, and I don't like where it's headed.
that like these liberal values don't touch the wallet. That's where there's a firewall between, yeah, you can limit people's economic, political power, but or you can limit their political and their military power, but the political or the economic, that's just that's like one of those. It seems like it's and that's I'm having a conversation this weekend with a conservative, and I'm trying to argue, you know, against like not against private property, but trying to see if he can explain from first principles why the state of the world, how we carved it up in 2020 right now is all good. Like, because it's like, the history of the world, smash and grab, right? Like whatever you can take up until the last century or so. And then it's like, oh, we've got places like the UN and we've got democracy and everything's been kind of like fair. But it's like so few people participated in that process. Everyone else got, yeah, it's like, yeah, it's this game of Grand Theft Auto where you just pause and like whoever's got the biggest pile of cash, well, that's it. Well, we owned it. We own this land. We own this property. We have we have the God-given impetus to exploit it. It's so weird.
There's an image. There's an image that reminds me of, which I'm quite fond of. And it's a wealthy man coming home to his manor, finding a bunch of poor folks standing outside the gate. And the wealthy man says, "What the fuck are you doing? Get off my property." And the poor men say, "Where did you get this property from?" He says, "From my father." Where did he get his property from? Well, from his father. And where did he get that property from? Well, he fought for it. Well, okay, we'll fight you for it. Yeah, they they got what they needed and they changed the rules up so you couldn't fight them back.
Yeah, that's why it's like you what you mentioned, like with the carbon credits and spending the money to kind of clean up our messes. It just feels like that makes sense. Like, you gotta be fair and equitable with people, or you're going to just like what is the rest of the is the rest of the 6 billion people on the planet just going to sit back and be like, well, they got there first and they made a lot of money.
Unfortunately, right now that is the only thing they really can do.
Right.
Which is sucks to be them, I guess. I'm glad I live here so I can feel bad about the hollow shell of the nation that I was born within, rather than feel terrible looking at it from outside. Yeah.
Well, hey man, I really appreciate the time. I'll like yeah, I really appreciate the time to follow through having this conversation. I think my audience is really going to enjoy it, and yeah, if you ever need because I feel like a lot of times when you have arguments of destiny, I'm a pretty good I do some of these debate reviews where it's like that last thing with the Kenosha, like I think that really came down to like your experiences where you grew up and your background versus his, and like the things you were saying were just literally, I mean, he was also saying it in the max asshole way possible.
I think the main issue with that debate is, and this is my fault. I don't know if this is something he does deliberately or if it's just a byproduct of how he is. But the main problem with that debate is that I was debating the wrong thing. I'm generally pretty permissive when it comes to self-defense laws and when it comes to self-defense as a concept. I wasn't there to debate the Kenosha shooter. I was there to debate his comments on it. The people who
Yeah,
died deserve to die, that they were stupid and fuck them and fuck everyone else, and that the far-right militias should shoot these people for burning down. Whatever. That's what I
right,
mainly took
right,
issue
right,
with.
right,
But so it was my fault for letting myself get sucked into that. I still think there's a lot of nuance to the legitimacy of a self-defense claim, but I suppose we'll see.
Yeah, there is, because like man, I don't know. I don't like I hate talking too much about that stuff, because as I think I've heard you say, it gets real larpy real fast. But like, I'm always trying to take intellectual positions that I won't look like an asshole for taking 6 months from now. Uh
No, if I was in a active shooter situation, I would simply backflip and fire down in an arc with my akimbo
sure.
yeah,
Your gun.
blade Uzis. Right, yeah, to neutralize the threat, of course.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. We all know this. Attack pattern Vosh beta 1.
Yeah. That's what the home gym is for, to keep the backflip strong.
Yeah. Well, hey man, thanks for coming on the show. I don't know. This podcast will come out this Wednesday. You can hang up on me now. I don't know how to end these things.
Don't worry. I'll take it from here. Do you want to shout out your socials? We got a good, I don't know, 6,500 people watching.
Yeah, you can follow me at Aaron Hubbard. That's a BM. That's a nod to my cult upbringings. L. Ron Hubbard, Aaron Hubbard BM on Twitter. If you like pop culture and you want to hear it from some people that aren't offensive in their political opinions, I can recommend Bald Move. Baldmove.com, at Bald Move, and then our fledgling political network that we're getting off is Swizzbold, because I also do a show just on like culture and like better living with my wife, relationships, kind of advice show, and then Three Right Turns is the lefty progressive political analysis from a cultural conservative kind of background and upbringing. So yeah, I'd appreciate everybody in your audience checking that out if they want to.
Of course. Give me your links in Discord, and I'll add them when I post the video. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate the conversation. Seriously, it was a lot of fun. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Good luck.
Yeah, you too.